Hi. Hey, I'm Claire. I want to talk about what I'm reading, what I'm currently reading, and then all the books that I physically own that I want to read this year. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. We'll start with the books that I'm currently reading right now, starting with The Vampire Lestat by Anne Rice. I'm a huge fan of the show Interview with the Vampire on AMC. So last week I read Interview with the Vampire and I flew through it. I absolutely loved it. And at first I was like, I'm only going to read this one. I'm not going to read any of the sequels. I'm going to wait until season 3 comes out and then I'm going to read The Vampire Lestat because I actually really enjoyed the process of watching the show first and then reading the book. I felt like the book was more enjoyable, kind of knowing the broad strokes of what happened. But after I finished Interview with the Vampire, I was like, I need to start the next one immediately. So I did. And I'm about 200 pages in and I'm loving it. I'm loving it so much. I have not been able to put this book down. I almost didn't record this video tonight because I just wanted to keep reading this. And that is exactly what I will be doing once this video ends. Period. I'm a pretty big vampire fan. I would consider myself somewhat of a vampire fanatic. And this year I'm trying to read as many vampire books as I possibly can. So this is the fourth one that I've read so far this year. I've read Carmilla, Dracula, Interview with the Vampire, and now The Vampire Lestat. And that's my verdict of that. The next book that I'm currently reading is Moby Dick by Herman Melville. What compelled me to read this, you might ask? About a month and a half ago, I decided that I really needed to read this book for some reason. I've been mostly listening to the audiobook, but I'm like almost 200 pages in, and I'm really loving it so far, actually. It's really funny. I have been deathly afraid of the ocean and whales for like as long as I can remember. And as a Pisces, I figured it was well past time I got over that fear. So I'm reading this. Um, I'll let you know how that goes. It's probably going to take me a very long time to finish that book, but I'm in it for the long haul. I'm doing it. And you know what? I'm enjoying my time so far. So that's everything I'm reading right now. That's actually not as many books as I usually read. Usually I'm having like 3 or 4 at a time, and one of them, at least one of them, is nonfiction. I was looking through my books to decide which one I should start reading next. These are just specifically the books that I like own physically. I get a lot of my books from the library and I'm going to continue to do that, but I was looking at my shelf and I realized I've only read like 30% of the books on my shelf, not even, maybe, I don't know. So, we're going to put a change to that this year. We're going to read as many as we can. Yes, let's start with the classics. So, up first, what the book I'm probably going to start reading next is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I honestly didn't read that many classics in high school, or I didn't read the same classics that other people seem to have read in high school. And Frankenstein is one of those that's just like, I've never gotten around to it. It's short, it seems like right up my alley with the monsters and the existentialism. So, I'm excited to see what this is all about. I feel like I can't, in good faith, consider myself a horror fan, a gothic fan, without having read Frankenstein. So we need to get on that. The next classic is one that I'm very excited about. It's the uncensored version of The Picture of Dorian Gray. I love The Picture of Dorian Gray. It's one of my favorite classics. And when I heard that this was a thing, I needed to get my hands on it immediately. But none of the Barnes and Nobles in my area was selling it. But one day, I looked on the Barnes and Noble website, and the one closest to me had it in stock. So I rushed over there, and I looked all around the store for it. I couldn't find it, so I was like, "Oh my god, did someone take it out from under me?" So I asked one of the workers, and he looked it up. He went in the back and got it out for me. This was the only copy they had, and they hadn't even put it out on the floor yet. I went in there and I snagged it. So I'm very excited about this. Big Picture of Dorian Gray fan, big Oscar Wilde fan. Likewise, another book that I want to read this year is I have this, it's The Trial of Oscar Wilde. It's like the court transcript. This is an ex-library book I got off of Thrift Books, and it just looks fascinating. As a fellow queer, the Oscar Wilde trial is a very important part of that history. So I'm excited about that. It just seems fascinating. Next is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I'm a huge, huge fan of the Netflix show. Mike Flanagan, if you're watching this, please cast me. You're my dream director to work with. I actually started this like years ago. I got, let's see, 16 pages in. So we're gonna try to beat that this year. I love Mike Flanagan's adaptations. I love all of his TV shows. And I find just like the art of adaptation so fascinating. Like much like Interview with a Vampire, I think The Haunting of Hill House is one of those shows that's like it's based on the book, but they make a lot of changes. And I just think that's so cool how the writers are able to take the source material, make all these changes, but still keep the heart of the story that they're adapting. So I can't wait to dive into this and Shirley Jackson's other work so that I can understand the show so much better. Next, we got the Brontë sisters, okay? Starting with Jane Eyre. This is like classic gothic, so I can't believe I haven't read it already. This is my mom's copy of Jane Eyre, and she made some like annotations in it, but my mom actually hates this book. And so she sent it to me and she was like, I want to know what you think. So I don't know. I think I'm going to like it though, honestly. Continuing with the Brontes, we got Wuthering Heights. I got this copy at a used bookstore, and it's like a book that someone read in high school because it's filled with all these like pencil marks, annotations, and it says on the top, can you see that? Kate Bush Fan Club. And then a little ways into the book, there is a printout of the lyrics to Wuthering Heights by Kate Bush. I just thought that that was so charming, so I had to buy it, and now this is like one of my prized possessions. I just think that's so cute. So I hope I like it. This person seems to have liked it. Apparently Kate Bush likes it, so that's it for the classics. I have two Stephen King books, Pet Sematary and Salem's Lot. As I said earlier, I want to read as many vampire books as possible this year, so I figured Salem's Lot is, classic. I obviously have to read this. I've actually never read any Stephen King books, so I've been looking up what the best, first Stephen King book I should read. And a lot of people said that Salem's Lot is a good first one, but I think I actually want to read Pet Sematary first. I don't know why. It's just a feeling. It's a vibe. Stephen King says that this is his scariest book, in his opinion. And I want to put that to the test because I do not get scared. I can watch a horror movie alone in the dark at 3 a.m. and sleep like a baby afterwards. Actually, this is one of the few Stephen King books that I've never seen the movie version of. So I'll be going into this almost completely blind. I know the basic premise and I know the inciting incident, like the thing that happens that sets the rest of the plot in motion. That thing, the thing. I know that thing, but I don't know anything else about what happens. So I'm excited about this. And then Salem's Lot is just like Stephen King's version of Dracula. And I read Dracula early this year and I loved it. So we'll see. I don't know. Next is American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis. I've been wanting to get into Bret Easton Ellis, see what he's all about. I'm a big, big fan of the movie. I was actually Patrick Bateman for Halloween last year, and I looked really cute. I was very, very sick the week of Halloween, so I couldn't go out in that outfit. I couldn't strut my stuff all over town, which is very tragic. But you bet your ass I put on that little costume and I pranced around my house. And you know what? I looked hot. I was also physically very hot because, like I said, I was very sick. But if I'm going to call myself a real fan, I'm going to need to read the book. So I've had this sitting on my shelf with my little Patrick Bateman Funko Pop sitting on top of it. Isn't he so cute? I've seen the movie. I'm just kind of expecting that, but in book form and maybe a little bit weirder. I don't know. We'll see. The next book is I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. I was going to read this a while ago, but then I didn't. I've seen a lot of people talking about this on TikTok mostly. But this seems like this is the kind of TikTok recommendation when people will recommend it and be like, this is a book that's off of TikTok, but it's actually good. This is actually good. And I feel like those are the kind of recommendations that I'm mostly going to follow from now on because I've read a few TikTok books and let's just say I've been burned. I've been burned in the past. But this seems really interesting. It's a dystopian novel about a bunch of women, I guess, who live in like an underground bunker and they have never known men. Sounds interesting. And it's short, so it's not going to take me that long. We have My Dark Vanessa. I've heard excellent things about this book. I actually started this a few years ago. I got like, I want to say 50 ish pages in, but I really just have to be in the mood for something dark and depressing and soul crushing. It's about a teenage girl who gets into a relationship with her teacher, and then something like 20 years down the line, in the midst of like the Me Too movement, she's starting to see it for what it actually was and realizing the abuse that went on. So, not the happiest read. I'm very excited about this one, actually. I've been wanting to read this for a while. One of my reading missions this year is to find a romance book that I actually like because I'm a hopeless romantic, but for some reason I just have not been able to get into romance books. But I have this one. It's called Don't Want You Like a Best Friend. I was told by the friendly masked lesbian who sold this to me that this book is like lesbian Bridgerton, and I'm down for that. I don't know. Sounds cute, sounds fun. I'm a little bit wary about it. I'm not going to lie because it's one of these cartoony covers. I feel like it's just going to be a little bit too cutesy for my liking, which feels weird saying that because I never thought that I would be the type of person that anything was too cutesy for. But I've read a couple romance books now and I'm just not interested in them if there's not something like a little bit fucked up going on. I don't know. I don't know what that says about me, but I'm going to go into this book with an open mind. And the fact that it's gay does make it automatically a bit more interesting. So we'll see. I don't know. We'll see. Tell me about this dress, 'cause I don't want you like a best friend. Tell me about this dress so you could take it off. I actually am a good singer, believe it or not. Okay, speaking of gay, I have It Came from the Closet, this is like a collection of essays, queer reflections on horror. It's a collection of essays all written by queer people talking about horror tropes and like horror movies and horror as a genre and why the LGBT community really tends to gravitate towards horror. That sounds super, super interesting because I am a huge horror fan and I've heard really good things about this book. And they've only had one copy at my Barnes and Noble for like a very, very long time. And one time I just got really paranoid that it was going to sell out and then they weren't going to replace it. So I bought it. Next is a book that every queer person and their mother has recommended to me, and that's In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. This is a memoir, but it's supposedly like genre bending. It draws on like different horror tropes to tell this story about an abusive queer relationship that the author was in. I have heard nothing but praise for this book. Every single person that I know who has read it, every person that I've like seen who has read it has given it 5 stars, no notes. Like the hype could not be stronger for this book. So I'm very excited to get into it. Very, very excited. This is probably the next non-fiction book that I'm going to read, and I'm really excited to get into it because I love memoirs and I love gay people. It's a match made in heaven, honestly, as far as I'm concerned. In the same vein as a memoir, it's not really a memoir, To Selena with Love by Chris Perez, who is her husband. I love Selena Quintanilla. I think she is just the most talented, beautiful, amazing person to ever walk the earth. Her live performance of Si Una Vez got me through my junior year of college. I'm not even lying. I love her music. I think she's an icon. I think that she's a phenomenal singer. She has all the stage presence. She's a fashion designer, a business owner. And I've been thinking about her a lot lately because it was just recently my birthday, and I am now the age that she was when she died, which is really strange and sad to think about. So I've been thinking about her. And a few months ago, I was in Barnes and Noble and I saw this on the shelf. And this was one that like I've been meaning to buy at some point, but I wasn't planning on buying anything that day. So I was like, I'm not going to buy that. But I will just read the introduction, see what it's about. I read the introduction and I just started crying in this Barnes and Noble. And I was like, oh, I have to get the book now, I guess. So now I own this and I think it's about time that I read it. Look at her. She's so beautiful. I'm going to start crying again. Next is a little change of pace. We got the Yoga Sutras. I'm big into yoga, big yogi. I've been tossing around the idea of getting my yoga teacher certification for a few years at this point, but this year I wanted to really get serious about that. And this is just one of the foundational texts of yoga, of the yogic philosophy. So yeah, this is a must read this year. And I've been reading a lot of spiritual books lately, and so it just seemed like a matter of time before I read this. The only reason that I haven't actually read this sooner is because I couldn't find it anywhere. It was nowhere. I had to find this on thrift books. I got it in the same order that I got the Oscar Wilde trial one. But finally, we got How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. This is about drugs, specifically psychedelic drugs. They made a Netflix documentary based on this book a few years ago called How to Change Your Mind. And I watched that. I thought it was fascinating. And so I picked up this book. And I think this is the year. I think this is the year that we get through it. I mean, for one thing, look at that cover. That's a beautiful book cover. And it's been sitting on my shelf, and all I have been staring at for the past couple of years is that ugly ass spine. It's actually not that ugly. It's not that bad. But this, compared to this, come on. Oh, honorable mention. This is not a book that I own the physical hard copy of, but I have The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt on my Kindle, and I definitely want to read that. I read The Secret History last year and I absolutely loved it. I just fell in love with Donna Tartt's writing style, and The Goldfinch is what she won the Pulitzer Prize for. So I gotta read that. It's an absolute must. I've had it recommended to me by multiple people in my life, in real life as well as on the internet. So that is definitely a must read for this year as well. So that's a lot of my reading list for this year. I'm fully expecting it to change. I probably won't get through all of these. I'll probably read a lot more that aren't mentioned here, but feels like a good guide. I think Frankenstein and In the Dream House are the ones that I'm going to read like next very soon. Well, that's all I got. So until next time, thanks for watching.